Good afternoon and welcome to the design track. My name is Scott Gunter and I'm Vice President of User Experience at Usability Sciences. I want to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Brandon Gadoci. He's a Senior User Experience Consultant for Improving Enterprises, is known as a guy who gets a lot done. Despite the many demands that come along with being a two-time dad, a CrossFit addict, husband, entrepreneur, and consultant, Brandon has managed to create experiences for everything from startups to large multinational corporations. His work includes Hot Schedules, Michaels, and Travelport. Please welcome Brandon.
Awesome. Everybody hear me okay? Good. Thanks, guys. Okay, but before we get started, I don't know if anybody saw this out front here. I feel like I owe a little bit of explanation on this profile picture. A couple of weeks ago, my family and I headed just north of where we live to a little farm type thing to take some family photos. And we had some really great shots that were taken. And among them was this happy looking fellow. So I thought, man, that'd make a great Twitter profile picture. I noticed that something kind of looked strange about it, or a little bit off, but I was going on vacation. I went ahead and sent it up and went on vacation. About a day later, I got this tweet from Jacob Morse, who some of y'all know. It says, I just want you to know, every time I see your avatar, my brain sees this, which that's exactly what that is. So two things. One is I'm never that happy. You should know that. And two is I apologize to anybody if you thought I was going to give you any family fashion advice here today. So with that, I thought I would get started by telling you a little bit about me, my background, where I come from, as most of you have never heard of me before. Pretty much since the beginning, I've always been a badass, as you can tell there by the denim jumpsuit, the popped collar, and the turquoise turtleneck. But if you're unconvinced, I can roll back the clock a little bit further and show you just how early I was rocking whale overalls there. So if you had any doubt in your mind. Of course, that's not true at all. I was born in 1978, and I looked like that on the bottom left. Shortly after, I looked like that. And not too long after, I looked like that. So I kind of got started out on the wrong foot. Spent most of my childhood being jealous of Richie Sancho. Richie played the drums. He got all the girls and knew very early on how to rock skinny ties. And so it kind of forced me to figure out what I was good at an early age. And for me, it was sports. Back in the days when you could wear denim to a baseball game, I got into playing soccer, basketball, etc. And that really became my identity as a kid. And I was an athlete. That's who I was, all the way up until about 8th grade when I moved to Texas. And I weighed in at a stout 4'11", 105 pounds, which meant that as soon as I walked into a tryout, I was placed on the B team, only if there wasn't a C team. So that caused me to start to kind of branch out again and search for what I was good at. I tried lots of stuff, tennis, theater. I even danced like Michael Jackson in the talent show my first year in Texas, which I did recover from by senior year. But it was that time in my life where I kind of figured out that I like to make stuff. I did all the normal stuff that a high school kid does, worked at Chuck E. Cheese, worked at a landscape place, etc. But I started making things then. I had my own kind of landscape business, my own Christmas tree delivery service. Etc. And that kind of behavior went all the way through college. So in college, I had a web design company. I tried to create a couple of other websites. One of them was called helpmepaybackmystudentloans.com, just a big picture of my face asking for money that I just got down like a couple of years ago. So I did all that, and that all was kind of my MO until I met my wife. And that's a little bit dramatic, but as I graduated college, I started to think about, do I have room for these entrepreneurial type things, or do I need to go get a real job so I can give her the life that she deserved, or that I thought that she deserved? So that small realization, not too long later, landed me at Merrill Lynch as a financial advisor. I kind of had an aha moment when I got in the door, in that I looked around and I thought, well, that guy is not that smart, and I think I'm smarter than that guy, and he's driving a Porsche, so I might be able to do this. And I really got intoxicated with the idea of becoming successful there. And it was entrepreneurial in nature in that you had to build a practice kind of out of nothing. And so I had a lot of success there. I built a financial management practice that managed over $100 million. I was one of the youngest managers in the Merrill Lynch system. And I led the largest training program that they had at the time for the company. And so life was good and money was great. And so what do all true entrepreneurs do as soon as they get comfortable? I hit the eject button and completely decided to reinvent myself at that time. So maybe I was bored. Part of me disagreed with the way the industry was set up, but mostly I wanted to get back to my roots of kind of entrepreneurialism. So I sold my practice to my partner, and I was off to conquer the world. One thing that I kind of forgot to mention was 8 months prior to that, I became a dad. And that's when I really realized what consequences were for the first time in my life. For those of you that don't have kids, you can kind of, you have this feeling of invincibility. But as soon as you have kids, you know what that means. But I was determined, and that motivated me. So I set out and decided to follow that dream. And then I found out 2 weeks after I quit that I was having a daughter. And so essentially I had twins. So I was without a job, reinventing myself, and had twins. So I give you all this background to give you some context into what I'm about to talk about and what the rest of this presentation is about. So I'm going to leave this next slide up just to drive home the context piece. Show of hands, how many people have kids here? All right, how many people have 2 kids that are close together? Does that look about right? Yeah, that was, this is how you feel, and this is how life looks and what it feels like pretty much every day for the first couple of years. Day after day after day. Didn't say night because there's not much of that. But why am I here talking to you today? It's because despite feeling like this, I've still managed to make a lot of progress in the last couple of years towards my goals. And just to kind of brief look back at some of the things that I've accomplished in that time. Number one, and I'm most proud of, I quit dipping tobacco. Y'all don't really care about that probably too much, but anybody that's been addicted to nicotine knows how difficult that is, especially at a time when you're not getting much sleep at all. I got in the best shape of my life. I lost 30 pounds. I self-published a book. I don't even know what that means, but I did it, and it worked. I launched a website where you could rate and review financial advisors. I taught myself Ruby on Rails. I learned CSS. I relearned HTML. I launched a website where you could track your CrossFit workouts called WOD Stack. WOD is workout of the day. And I just recently launched another web application called Task. It's a task management application, all while managing to attend weddings, travel, vacation, doctor's appointments, all the stuff this life is comprised of. Somehow figured out how to freelance about 5 big website redesigns. Stayed married, amazingly, and kept my job the entire time. So that's a lot of things that I kind of managed to fit into a small amount of time, and people are often asking me how I did that, and so that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. But I don't want to mislead you into some of the things that I mentioned here. Fabito was the name of the website where you could rate and review financial advisors. That failed for a bunch of different reasons that I'll get into a little bit later. The book sold over 500 copies, so that's great. But I'm not going to retire on that at $9 a pop. I think I get $1. I don't know what it is. It's nothing. The WOD Stack, the workout tracking site, that's 1.5 years old. It's really, really popular. It's got over 3,000 users, 30,000 workouts recorded. I'm getting 10 signups a day. Absolutely no revenue on it, nor will there ever be, I don't think, as these guys keep reminding me. And then Task. Task is my most recent venture. It's 2 months old, 900 users, plenty of press. We got an angel investment and really close to revenue. So I tell you this because I haven't made it yet, right? I'm not standing up here telling you how to make $1 million or how to build a team. That's not what this talk about. This talks about how to get to a position where you can worry about all that stuff. In preparation for this, I took a survey, and 70% of the respondents said that they had not created a revenue-generating business yet. I think that's probably a little bit high. I think most people have not created a revenue-generating business on the side. And 84% of the people that had not did have an idea, but 60% of them, or over half, said that they hadn't started working on it yet. And so that's what we're going to get into a little bit, is how to get that idea out of your head and out into the wild, building momentum. What's kind of unique about this audience is that when we're talking about the ideas that are in this room, we're not talking about things that require huge capital investments. Most of the people in here don't want to start an oil drilling operation or a restaurant. Most of the things we have, or the ideas that are here, are about or have a lower barrier to entry. Hopefully it's a little bit different perspective on some of this stuff because I'm in the trenches with you still, and that hopefully gives you some insight. Okay, so here's how we're going to address that. We're going to talk about getting uncomfortable to create momentum. We're going to talk about getting shit done and managing your time, and we're going to talk about staying motivated. But before we get into any of it, according to the survey, 60% of you have an idea, so either write it down or put it in the front of your brain because I want you to reference it as we go throughout the rest of the presentation. Okay, so getting uncomfortable. I want everybody in this room to be as happy as this guy under stress. Right? He's under a heavy load at the bottom of a squat, and he's got a big smile on his face. That's not the way I handle that generally, but he does. But all progress, right, is uncomfortable. By definition, to become something we're not or change, to become something we're not, we have to change, and change hurts. We know that associated with change is failure, pain, sacrifice, and doubt, but also is hope and success and all the things that we kind of aim for. We got to learn to live here, right? The longer that we can stay uncomfortable, the more progress we can make, and getting comfortable in the uncomfortableness, is that right? Uncomfortableness is important. But you don't have to take it from me. I think Rocky said it really well here when he said it's about how hard you can get hit and keep on moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, Rocky VI was a cheesy movie. I like all the Rocky movies. But this quote is fantastic. You can watch the little YouTube video of it. I like it. But what's that mean to this group, right? Because we're not talking about doing squats or Rocky. Here's what I think it means to me and to this group. We have to start by filtering our ideas. We have to take a hard look at what we have in our head. When we say things like, you know what would be great, or you know what we should build, or you know what we should do, it becomes a little bit harder when we say, that will earn money, or that I can accomplish. It gets a little bit tougher, so that starts to get uncomfortable. And honesty can be uncomfortable. This is not a business plan at this stage, please. We're not talking about a business plan. Don't write a business plan. Do write one maybe later, but not now. There's 4 simple but really tough questions that I've come to believe you should ask before you make any kind of effort on an idea. How many potential customers are there in the market? How much money do they spend? Is there room for innovation, and will they pay for it? One note is, if your idea is dependent upon being first to market, I'd scrap it because I'm not sure that we have the bandwidth to kind of pursue that and handle all the stress that would come along with it. There's plenty of ideas out there. So if you can if it kind of passes that stage and it seems to be a validity or a valid idea, move to the next step and either do this on paper or somewhere and make a list, basically. Skills needed to start this idea. On the left-hand side, write skills that you have, and on the right-hand side, write skills that you don't have but need. For me, in my case, for one of the things I was looking at early on was HTML, CSS, and visual design, but I didn't know how to program, deploy a web application, raising money, etc. But the point is, make these 2 lists, and then on the right-hand side, cross it out and say, these are things I will learn. Now, if you're like normal humans, right now in everybody's brain, they're saying, I can't do that, or that I don't have the time to do that, or it doesn't work. That's the exit from uncomfortable, and we have to kind of fight not to take that, because my guess is 50 to 70% of the things on this list are things that you can learn to do. Again, this group has access. The skills that we want to learn are really easy to learn. That's maybe not a fair statement, but I'll show you some tools about how we can acquire the knowledge that we need to kind of move forward on them. So challenge yourself. Take a look at a couple of these things. Now, some of you guys and gals might know about these tools, but they've been really helpful to me. So Code School. I always say that whenever I was practicing, I keep saying Code School. Code School is a great resource where you can take free classes. They have all kinds of really cool themes, like Rails for Zombies, like the whole tutorials. Anybody taken this stuff ever? Yeah, it's kind of a neat way to do it. It's real interactive, etc. And I love the quote. This tweet was talking about Code Academy, which is something similar. But it says, Code Academy is badass. All you ideas guys, get out there and learn it. So if you're interested, or your idea requires code. Stack Exchange. Who here has heard of Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow? Okay, good. For those of you that haven't, it's like some kind of magical oracle that answers questions. It's a very strange thing. When I was teaching myself Ruby on Rails, I would get so frustrated at night. I'd be up late drinking wine, which added the 30 pounds that I took off later. But I would get to a point where I couldn't figure it out, and I would just slap my code up there with as much detail as I could, and by morning somebody from somewhere would answer it with exact line numbers and codes and etc. Now you got to have a little bit of thick skin if it comes to the coding site. In the beginning, and when you're new, sometimes you don't even know how to ask the question, and so you have to kind of take their feedback. I used to put in all my questions easy question to see if I could get it answered, and I got yelled at for that. And another person that I met on here used to operate under it was a guy who operated under a female avatar because he thought he got his questions answered more. So whatever strategy you have to use. But Stack Exchange is the umbrella that wraps all these sites up. There's everything from coding to cooking to Q&A, and they're launching new stuff all the time, so check that out if you haven't. And then Quora, you've probably heard about, but it's a great resource for asking really general questions like what's the best way to learn how to program, or what's the best way to market my startup, or get beta testers, etc. So check that out. So one note is don't build a team, right? That's not what you generally hear when it comes to these talks, but at this stage, I don't think it's the right move. Ultimately, building a team will be critical to your success. Either your ability or somebody's ability to build an awesome team will be critical to the success of the idea, but not at this stage. Do what you can yourself. You're the most motivated at this point, and you've got to transfer that motivation as intact as possible to other people that are going to help you. And this is kind of where momentum starts. And in my experience, momentum is greater than ideas. Anybody recognize that picture in the background? I've been giggling all morning about it. Those guys do, right there, yeah. Prestige Worldwide. Yeah, it's greatness. Yeah, fantastic. Great momentum on that gig that they were doing. So, but if you don't believe me, here's just maybe a hypothetical, right? The pants chair, pants that become a chair when you sit down. Anybody want to invest in that right now? Maybe one or two? What if I told you it was mentioned on The Office, it's to be featured on QVC's Gag Gifts, and the website's taken 1,435 pre-orders, right? Now, you don't know if that's true or not, but it changes your opinion a little bit. Momentum can make bad ideas seem pretty good. Think about what Twitter must have sounded like in the beginning. But moving on to a more real example, in my experience when I was launching WodStack, I basically in one night pieced together, had this idea, well, what if I can track my workouts online? And essentially what I built in one night was like a blog with multiple authors, like enter a title and description, and then I just marketed it as a workout tracking tool. And put it up there. I remember going to bed and then being like, man, I should have researched if there was any competitors in that. So I went back down to my computer and found one. They weren't that great, so I decided to move on. But I took action first, and that momentum is addicting. That momentum is more addicting than most of the success that you can have early on. And then so what I did is I went out and I told my friends about it. I said, hey, what do you think if I made this or spent more time doing it? Would you be interested in it? They said, yes. So I went to my gym and I said, hey, look, a couple of the people said this is a pretty useful tool. Do you guys want to maybe get people here using it at the gym? They said, yes. And then I pulled some marketing magic, right? I went and followed 1,000 people on Twitter under their name that had CrossFit in their bio, because Twitter shoots them a nice little email that says WodStack's following them, and then they'd click the link and they'd come and sign up. I made friends in the industry. I experimented. I made some T-shirts. I sent them out to people, just very small things to start to get other people excited about it. And eventually, about 8 months in, I partnered with somebody on it because I kind of got to the end of my rope on my technical expertise. But here's what momentum looked like for WodStack. It was me. Somebody from Stack Overflow showed me how to direct link into the server so I could watch people ping it, right? As they're hitting it, I could watch where they were going on the pages and see when they were signing up. And so I was like addicted to that, like seeing that go. So I'd have it up and my wife's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, don't worry about it. It's something we're spending a lot of money on that's not going to make any money. But that, right, kind of introduced me to this concept that the more momentum that you can generate, the less the time is between your ideas and action. So an example of that is when this thing started cranking and people were excited about it, I was sitting on my couch watching the terminal, and I had this idea. I was like, it would be really cool if somebody could link in a video from YouTube and it would pop up and display their workout. Because does anybody here CrossFit besides this front row right here? Okay, good. CrossFitters are pretty excited about videotaping, that's funny, about videoing themselves and putting it online. So I thought that'd be a great way to get them to use the site. You can find any of these guys in some videos over here too. But at the minute I figured that out, I was like, wait a minute, I know how to do that. And people would use it. And so the gap between idea and action was like 45 seconds, right? Because there's momentum. So the more excitement you can generate, the faster things are to happen. So why do I think that these are the three things that we need to concentrate on? Here's what happened in my personal experience. Fabeetle, the rate and review websites, did it have potential? Yeah, huge market, high barriers to entry. I knew the right people. I got sent to Silicon Valley. I met with a whole bunch of big investors out there. Could I do enough to get the idea out of my head? Nope. I didn't know how to code. I had a developer that I was working through. I was kind of beholden to, who wasn't excited about the project as I was. Actually filed unemployment on me when it was all over. Could I generate enough momentum? Nope, I couldn't. So what's the status? It failed. All right, so WODstack. Could I do enough? Yep, I built the thing. Did it generate momentum? Absolutely. People love it. Was there potential? Nope, kind of missed that one in the beginning. Small market. They're not willing to pay for the service. So how's it doing? Meh. Task, was there potential? Yep, task management market's huge. Could I do enough? Yep, got it out of my head. And did we generate momentum? Yes. And kind of an important note here on the last one is I had a business partner at the time, and even though I communicated the idea to him for the task management application really early on, and he seemed to get it, nothing happened for almost 8 months until I said, all right, I want to build this thing, and went in the code and did as much as I could and kind of showed him what I was talking about, and all of a sudden he got it and he was on. We built the thing in 10 days and launched it into beta. So in summary, getting uncomfortable, filter your ideas, challenge yourself on what you can do, and evaluate the potential momentum before you move forward. Okay, so now let's talk about getting shit done and managing your time. When you look at this piece here, when we look at the excuses of why people haven't started their ideas yet, 50% of the people said not enough time, as is kind of expected. The other ones up there we'll hit as we go through this as well. But let's first take a look at what that means, right, when it comes to time management. Let's take a look at the landscape and the tendencies that we have as people. You all have heard this before, Parkinson's law, work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. All that means to me is we have a tendency to complicate things. Zig Ziglar, everybody know who Zig is? Yeah. Zig said if you worked every day like you're going on vacation tomorrow, you'd be the most productive person on the planet. And it's true. If you got 2 weeks to finish something, you'll find ways to complicate it. We often notice this in other people more than we do ourselves, but we as people have a tendency to complicate things. We all have to feel like we have a full plate. If we didn't feel this way, then we'd have to admit that we're not willing to do more. That's from my book. I'm quoting myself. Sweet. Thought that was kind of cool. But we do. We have to feel like we have a full plate. Otherwise, we don't feel like we're valuable. Where does that come from? In my opinion, I feel like we're taught that really early on. We watched a generation of people who worked for companies for 30 years and had a pension when they left. Doesn't work like that anymore. It used to be show up early, stay late, and people saw you doing that, and you'd move up in the ranks. This guy here, I found this picture. To me, it represented every motivational speaker I've ever seen come through, and the bottom line is I used to turn the coffee pot on in the morning and lock the doors on the way out, and that's how you do it. I'm not saying that hard work isn't important. I'm just saying hard work for the sake of hard work I don't think gets us where we want to go. But we do. We have a tremendous demand placed on us right now, right? We have productivity. We're expected to be more productive than ever. We have more on our plate. We're supposed to be more connected than ever. If you're not, you end up with profile pictures that look like Mervin's. And so there's a big demand on us. So add all that up, and here's what we look like. We're looking at, we know that we will complicate our work. We know that we have to feel busy. We think that's the way to get ahead, and we have more to do than ever. That's kind of a recipe for saying I don't have enough time, right? Whether we know it or not. I think Seth Godin said it pretty well in his book. Suddenly, quite suddenly, in the scheme of things, it seems like the obedient worker is brought into a sucker's deal. The educated, hardworking masses are still doing what they're told, but they're no longer getting what they deserve. And so I kind of had this realization as a financial advisor that maybe I'm going to look up in 30 years and have a skill set that's outdated and not really have done anything. So I think this still holds true. Now, how do we fight back against that? This is what I've had to learn. We work where you can in productive sessions on the right things. You have good tools, and you have to learn to be a jerk about your time. So let me take you through what my day looks like with 2 kids right now. Maybe this is familiar to some people. 7 a.m. I wake up, there's kids crying, and my wife's asking me questions about the day. What are we going to do? Who's going to pick up the kids? Etc. At 8 o'clock, I drop the kids off at school. They usually are crying on the way. At 8:30, I go to the coffee shop where I go to work, and I'm fending off incoming emails and meetings. At 11:30, I used in this case that I have to take my daughter to the doctor, but there's any number of things that come up in a given day. Sometimes there's crying children there too. Back to the coffee shop to work for a couple of hours, workout at 4:30, dinner's at 5:30. My times are kind of messed up here. And then usually after dinner, I take the kids to the park or to the slides, or we go do something that they enjoy that's really important to me. And then we get back, we take baths, we read a book, and we go to bed. Then they go potty, and we go to bed again. And then we get them water, and they go to bed again. If anybody's seen that Samuel L. Jackson deal, yeah, it's exactly like that. And then finally they get to bed about 10:30, and there's just a few whimpers kind of in the distance. My point in showing you this is that, A, it's really choppy, right? Like there's only small amounts of times to do things, even late into the night. And B, is it's interrupted. It's not like if I'm not working, I'm thinking about a solution, right? Or I'm processing things. It's totally, I'm onto something different. And so I had to learn to work in that. I was the kind of guy that would kind of sit down and accomplish a task from start to finish. So, 8 hours, fine, I'll knock it out and done for the night. It doesn't work like that. Kids cause that to kind of change. The zone is a luxury to me. I stopped chasing it a while ago. This idea that I'm going to get in the flow or set up my day, I just don't. If I get into it, it's great. It usually involves coffee and good music and bacon. But it's something that I don't wait for. I've had to learn to chop things down. And I've had to learn to work in a way that I always know what's the next most important thing to do with the time that I have. Progress over perfection is kind of my new mantra. The progress goes back into building momentum, and that's what kind of drives things. But don't get me confused. I'm not talking about multitasking. I don't believe that that's a valid way to do things at all. I'm talking about being really focused for short periods of time, but not wasting time getting in and out of work sessions. What allows you to do that is having good tools. I talked about knowing what to do next at all times, and so I'm going to take you through a couple of things that I've used. I've tried almost every. I'm like a appaholic, man. If it's a new task management app, I download it and I try it out. So I've tried everything out there. I've used multiple tools, and some of the problems that you get into is that you're using multiple tools for yourself to kind of piece together this management system for your workload, but then your client may have another tool, or there's this tool over here. And so in reality, you only have one pile of stuff to do, right? Across projects, across initiatives, across lists. And the reality is you only have so much time. So you have this big pile of stuff to do, and you only have so much time to do it. And your ability to manage that is kind of where your success is going to come from. Now, before I go into any of these tools, just go get these. Stop fighting it. It makes it a lot easier. I don't want to get in a big discussion about it, but it's really important. From a chat standpoint, I use Campfire. Many of you guys and gals have used this, but I love it because you can do it. File uploads are really easy. It's kind of device agnostic. You can get it anywhere. Skitch, if you have a Mac, is a great tool for taking screenshots, annotating them, and then what I love is you can drag and drop that right to the Campfire browser and it uploads. So it saves a lot of time in typing things out. Workflowy. How many people have heard of Workflowy? Just a couple. Okay, Workflowy is like the normal everyday outline meets Inception. It's like this endless experience of organization. You can map your entire brain on it. It's super easy to use. And I've got my entire life in there. It's great for taking notes. I've got everything in there from like initiatives for helping underprivileged kids to recipes that I want to cook next week. Like unbelievable amount of stuff. Okay, and then here's the alert, right? This is the self-promo part. Task is the task management application that I built to manage that workload. I'll just take you through a couple pieces of it because it's a representation of a hacked-together system I used to address this a long time ago. We launched this about 60 days ago. How it works is you create a list, you create tasks within those lists, and each task has a time estimate because in the real world, tasks take time. So you have to have a time estimate on it. You then position your lists in priority order, being at the top, your list being at the bottom, and then within those lists, you do the same thing with your tasks. So you drag and drop them to priority order. What that does, it establishes a priority based on its position, based on a task's position within task in the list, and then its position within its list position within other lists. And so what you end up with is kind of this task pipeline of prioritized stuff that needs to be done. which is neat, right? Because it brings everything together. But that's not really where the magic is. The magic is here in the planner, where you go in and you enter the amount of hours that you want to work today, tomorrow, and into perpetuity, and you hit update, and it goes and builds you efficient days based on the amount of time that you said you wanted to work. So if you've got X amount of hours, it'll fill in the highest priority tasks until the next highest one won't fit because of the time estimate, but will backfill tasks that will fit. And so what you end up doing is adding a planned for date to your entire workload. So now you have a better look at what you can accomplish when, what you need to work on based on your priorities, and you can accurately communicate to people when you're going to get to their stuff. So that's why we built it, and it's been really, really great for me. Keynote is not something that I used until I came to improving. I love it now. If you've been to this conference before, you know of Travis's work. I think it's a great tool. After I've chatted with people and I've organized the notes and I've organized the workload, and I know I'm going to be working on Keynote's a great way to communicate people ideas. It has interaction, it's really flexible, and it's really deliverable, which I like. Google Hangout I like over Skype. Tout app, who's heard of Tout here? You got to check this out. This is addicting. Tout is a way to templatize your emails. If you're sending a lot of repetitive emails, you can fire them out really quickly, but what's really cool about it is it'll tell you when it's opened by the person, but more than that, if you have links in your email, it'll tell you when they're clicking on them and what they're clicking. So it gives you kind of an advantage when you're doing things like trying to raise money for something, or when people are looking at stuff, etc. So I'm like, that's like the terminal to me too. Like, I'm just refreshing and seeing when people are hitting it. And then Dropbox, if you don't know what that is, then you probably wouldn't be here. So what do you do after you know how to work and what you need to work on? You need to kind of learn to be a jerk, right? And for some people in the room, it's going to be harder than others. But you need to play defense of your time. It can be hard, right? You need to say no. You need to not call people back. You need to direct them to your channels. I try to direct everybody in my life to Facebook Messenger because I can respond on the computer or on my phone, right? So instead of having to text on the phone and go back and forth, but direct them to your channels. Put the ball in their court. That's a great way to buy some time. Like, that's a really great idea. Can you email me those thoughts and we'll go over it? And people never do it. So learn techniques like that. There's plenty of resources, honestly, on how to guard your time. I won't go over everything because it is kind of unique to people. And if you have trouble saying no, go pick up a book called The Power of a Positive No. I'd love to tell you it's good, but I've never read it because I don't have trouble saying no at all. My wife and I often joke, like, she doesn't know how I have 700 Facebook friends. I don't either. Doesn't make any sense to me. But be ready for criticism if you take this tact. I get a lot of criticism, things like Brandon's unavailable, or he's hard to get in touch with, or he thinks he's got more important things going on than me. Those are people that are misinformed in two respects. One, they're misinformed about my workload, and two, they're misinformed about where they fall in my priorities. So I don't get mad at them. I just kind of take that and move on. The people that are informed, though, that's the ones you need to pay attention to. And I'll call out Dustin here, sent me this nice message on Facebook, said, hey, look, I love the way that you balance everything. Now, Dustin is informed about my priority list and how I go about my days. And so that's the kind of stuff that keeps you going. As long as you're getting this side of the equation, then you know you're not being too much of a jerk. And obviously, don't be a jerk to the people that are really important to you. But I shouldn't have to say that. All right, so we talked about creating momentum. We talked about how to work, and then now how do we keep it up, right? Because motivation is something that comes and goes. So everybody stand up, and I want you to repeat after me. I'm just kidding, that's stupid. Don't do that. Nobody do that. That's not the kind of motivation I'm talking about at all. I'm not talking about the kind of motivation that would require you clip out motivational phrases and tape them to their bathroom mirror. That never worked for me. I don't need help remembering why I'm doing something. I need help to do something. So this is motivation to me is kind of the second definition up there, which is more about how to be productive and how to stay in a place mentally and physically where you want to work and have the energy to work. And frankly, without this, I wouldn't be able to do as much as I do. That's why I put this piece in here, because it takes a lot of energy to be a parent and to be good at work and to try different things, or at least I think I'm good at work. So that's what I'll kind of take you through. So for me, it starts with eating the right food. If I eat poorly, I feel poorly. There's a lot of science behind this. I won't get into the different ways to eat because it's like nutrition's like religion, I've learned. So whatever works for you is great. I'll just say that I follow something called the paleo lifestyle, and it's just lots of meats and veggies. And I had in 2.5 years with 2 Petri dishes in my house, I've been sick once. So take that for what it's worth. Now sleep, right? That's what I'm supposed to say next is get 8 hours of sleep and you'll do fantastic. There's an asterisk by that because I don't have that option to get 8 hours of sleep, which has kind of forced me to run a really cool social experiment about what needs sleep and what doesn't. Creativity and inspiration, absolutely. Any of the best athletes in the world are getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night, but there's a lot of stuff that you can accomplish without sleep. And you have to kind of learn where your threshold is and what the trade-off is. At least I have. If I could sleep 8 hours, would I be great? But I can't stand up here and tell you that I would have done all those things that I mentioned in the last couple of years if I would have slept more. I honestly don't think that I would have. And so am I sleep deprived? Probably. Did I get a lot of work done on that? Yep. So take that for what it's worth. Sunlight, don't underestimate it. You all know this. Vitamin D, get out and do some light activity. Fitness, probably the most important thing of this list for me. I've heard it said that you need a third place where you can kind of not be at work and not be at home, and this is what provides inspiration. Fitness has done that for me, but I'm not talking about the kind of fitness that would cause you to grab a People magazine and go on the treadmill for 90 minutes. I'm talking about the kind that teaches you things about yourself, that pushes yourself, that helps you understand what you're capable of, and the type that changes your mind as much as it changes your body. When we're younger, we get this in organized sports, right? We're pushed, we're made to do sprints and things that we don't want to do. There's camaraderie, etc. But as we get older, that goes away, and I think we desperately miss that. I found that in CrossFit. Every day I drive to the gym, I get butterflies. When I'm there, I've got people screaming at me to do my best, and then I leave with more confidence. Two ways or 2 examples that I can tell you that this has permeated into my life is when I was learning Ruby on Rails, there was times, has anybody here tried to learn Ruby on Rails? Is it not very easy? I mean, they say it's easy, right? But it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. And so I would like bang my head at night and be like, I'm never going to be able to do this. And I would literally have to like tell myself, just pull yourself back up to the computer, get your head back in, ask questions, research, figure out a way to do it. That mindset is what I'm getting every day at the gym. And so that was important to me. Here's a little bit more of a funny one. In CrossFit, everything's done either for time or however much work you can do in an amount of time. And so I remember I put the water in the microwave on 2 minutes for tea, and then I was going to empty my dishwasher, and it started going, and I was like, how many dishes can I empty in that 2 minutes? And so that's what you want, you want that type of thinking to kind of branch out beyond the gym and get into your life. Relationships. I'm not talking about Maslow's relationships here and the social relationships we need to self-actualize. I'm talking about relationships that can help you in your pursuit of your goal. I've met a ton of people online. I've met my current business partner on Stack Overflow. And then the most recent angel investor that we got for Task, I met over Twitter, and now that you know my kind of fitness thing, you'll get a kick out of this. We were arguing. He was saying, you need to tell me what the company's worth so I can invest X for Y%. This is all happening over Twitter DM. And so after going back and forth, I said, all right, so let's say we call it 225,000 because that's how much I can squat 20 times. And he got a kick out of that and said yes, which is 245 now, by the way. But that all happened on Twitter. Take chances. Chances cause hope. When we were launching Task, there was a tweet that I looked at on my phone at 2 in the morning when I was going to bed. Said, anybody have any innovative ideas for totally new web apps? And so I just fired off 3 words. We just launched Task at 2 in the morning, which is probably against every PR rule of how to engage bloggers, but I sent that as I went to bed, and then 3 weeks later we got covered and got 400 beta testers from it, etc. So take chances, be absurd, do things that you don't think would work. Planting those seeds are what keep you checking your phone in the morning when you get out of bed. That hope is what propels things. So in my experience, all of this is about creating wins. Wins create hope. Hope creates activity. Activity creates progress, and progress creates momentum, and round we go. So get uncomfortable to create momentum. Get your shit done by managing your time right, and stay motivated. throughout that are all these tips that I'll post on my blog at gadoci.me in the coming days. You only live once, man, so make the best use of your time. That's all.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions. Okay.
You're a designer who had to learn a program. I'm a programmer who wants to learn design.
Nope. He said, I was a designer that had to learn how to program. He's a programmer that has to learn how to design. Do I have any tips? And what I would say actually is, have you checked out the Stack Overflow? Not Stack Overflow, but they have. Yeah, they have all kinds of resources there. I would take every tutorial that you can. I would ask dumb questions on there. I would experiment. I would tell yourself you're going to redesign your homepage and throw it out there, and let people critique it. Just do work. Just keep going. Just keep trying it. Don't be scared to put it out there. I mean, that's what I would say. But I'm not coming from that angle, so I realize design's a little bit of a different animal than programming. But they're both artistic in different ways. I don't know if that helps. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Here.
No, over here.
Oh, hi.
I was wondering so for myself, when I have a lot of ideas, right, I start to try and build them, but I often get overwhelmed by how much I don't know. And, I might take 7 days to research what is the best front-end language to implement in my design.
Yeah.
Right. And I never get to complete what it is that I want to work on because I can't get there because I'm so, almost like paralysis of analysis.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips, or do you ever get like that?
Yes. I would say two things. One, that's part of the process. Like I tried a million different things before I was able to have success. So you're doing it, A. But B is jump in and like actually trying. Are you getting in and coding things up, or is it just the analysis part? Yeah, so that's the key. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you learn as you go, and just keep chopping it down. When it gets overwhelming and it's too much, that's where you have to learn to really break things into small parts. Like I'm just going to get this blog post to post, and I'm going to go to bed, or I'm just going to get this JavaScript thing to work, and I'm going to go to bed. It's not I'm going to get it to work and do this and this and this and this and this and this. Break it up. So I don't know if that.
Somebody have a question over here?
Yep.
Do you or did you before ever feel like you needed time to do nothing and let your brain marinate? And do you have time for that? Did you just...
Yeah, that's a great question. I do. I think I maybe have a longer tolerance for that than some people, but absolutely when I talked about getting outside, that's important. Some days I just don't feel like working, never on work stuff. But yeah, I take those breaks. But that's why I built that task application too, because I wanted to know what happened to my entire workload if I said I'm going to do 0 today. I don't feel like doing anything. And generally it's not that bad, but now I know what the implication is versus not knowing and being stressed out about it in my time off. So, but yes, absolutely. I think that's important.
Any other questions?
Yep.
Okay, no more questions. Have a nice evening. Thank you.